Right, let's get straight into this one then, because I've only got 15 minutes to tell you about all the new features I possibly can in the F1 2021 game. Now, I will say I'm not really going to include many handling or gameplay changes within this because I've already done a video on that. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and also go check out my channel. Go check out that other video because there'll be some changes in there that I won't mention in this video. As I said, I've only got 15 minutes, so this is going to get cut off at some point. I've got a list of 40 in front of me. Let's see how many I can get through within that 50 minutes. I talk fast, but I also talk a lot, and this video is just going to be cut at some point. Let's get into it. Now, I am going to do them in order of kind of size, so the biggest features will be first. So if we do run out of time, you'll only miss some smaller features. Now, the first big feature for me is two-player career. I think this is going to be huge. I think everyone will enjoy it loads, and I think it'll be really big on YouTube. There'll be lots of YouTubers that do it together and that kind of thing. You can actually either race for the same team, so there'll be two modes. You can either do it if you move team, you move together, you're always teammates, or you can do it so that you have your own contract negotiations, so you can start in different teams, or you can start in the same team and eventually move to different teams. Beyond that, we don't know too much more. The only other detail we really know is that the career host can swap between friends. There'll be someone that's kind of hosting it, and someone will just join. So it's up to you whether you have the same friend join over and over again, or you have different friends. Beyond that, we don't know a lot. It isn't in the build that I've got access to at the moment, and they haven't really revealed too much. That we'll have to find out some more about that in the future. Next up, we've got the Breaking Point story mode. Brand new for F1 2021, an actual story mode. There's going to be cinematics, there's going to be scenarios, and it's going to be across 3 seasons. It's going to start in F2 2019, it's going to go through F1 2020, and then eventually into F1 2021. We've been told it's around about 6 hours long or so, but obviously that does depend, I guess, on how slow you decide to take it. But again, that's all we really know for now. You know, there's going to be a few characters in there. We know there's the return of Devon Butler from F1 2019, and there's going to be lots of other characters in it. But again, we just don't know too much more than that for now. We'll have to wait on the future. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see some more about that in the future. Next up, we've got Real Season Start. I actually really like this feature. Basically, for any race throughout the 2021 season, you'll be able to jump in the championship in that race. So let's say, as I'm recording this film, we've just had Baku, so they'll update the game and you'll have the Baku championship standings. So you'll be able to jump in a career from Baku onwards and take over, let's say, Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen. So, you know, let's say theoretically Max Verstappen goes on to win this championship this year. We don't know yet. Maybe that happens. But you could, if you wanted to, jump in as Max Verstappen and try and emulate that, or you could jump in as Lewis Hamilton and try and beat him. You could jump in as Sergio Perez and try and beat him from every single race. You can update it for every race. I really like the idea of this. We can create our own scenarios. That's it for that one. Next up is a brand new UI. So they've actually effectively completely redone most of the UI. It's all changed quite a bit. All the menus are different. The career mode's actually really quite different. They've got rid of the old kind of tree that they used to have for the upgrades. That's no longer there at all. It's all just kind of button based, I guess. It's all more menu based than tree based, and this applies to everything. It applies to even like the car selector, the driver selector, the menus themselves, the way you select options for Grand Prix mode. It's quite a big overhaul, and I think it's a big improvement. They I think just sort of optimized, learnt from their previous iterations, and yeah, quite a big change. Next up is a brand new damage model. This is one of the few features I will bring up from my gameplay video, because it's quite a big one actually. So now there's about an extra 5 or 6 or so areas, different areas of the car you can damage, from the sideboards to the floor to the diffuser, even the wing mirrors to some extent, and they can all affect obviously your downforce. They can also affect your drag. They can also affect the engine temperature. If you damage a side pod, you have a coolant leak, and then it starts to affect your engine temperature. So that's quite a lot more and will make quite a big difference in the game. Another quite a big change, it's not been covered too much, is classic cars are actually being removed. So the last few games in a row, we've seen various classic cars over the last sort of 20 years or so, but they're now all just completely gone. There will be no classic cars in F1 2021. You still have F2 and you'll still have F1, but no classics. I assume they will be released later on as DLC, which actually I don't hate, because let's be honest, I imagine a lot of us don't play the classic cars very often. I mean, I personally probably only spend literally about 2% of my time on classic cars. So for me, it's actually not a biggie. And this has been the biggest change year on year that we've had in the F1 series. So if we lose classic cars, but we get all these new features and it keeps up this momentum every year, I'm happy for them to be gone. So getting more into the nitty gritty now then, you can now start your career mode in F2. So this wasn't possible previously. I think it was possible when they first introduced F2, but it wasn't possible in last year's game certainly. And you can now start your career, so instead of having to jump straight into an F1 team, you can now start in F2, do a season, I presume a season, they've not really said too much more about it, but do kind of a season in F2 and then eventually get promoted up to F1. Sticking with career, there's now a lot more customization options, which is huge news, especially if you love watching career mode on YouTube. So you can basically now kind of slow things down, keep them on standard speed or speed things up. Things like the amount of acclaim, which is sort of like your respect, your reputation you get. Also your resource points for your developments, you can slow those down, speed those up. You can also even switch off like mechanical failures now. So just career mode in general is now a lot more customizable. And it means the YouTubers, people like Ben Daly and Arav, who do 100+ episodes of career mode, they're able to turn the rate of development down low. So they'll just elongate it a bit more and get more of a season. For me personally, on F1 2020, I did a My Team career where I create my own team. And by the end of the second season, we were dominant. We were really genuinely a really dominant team. We were scoring 1-2s. It was insane how dominant we were. So I would love to be able to slow that down. But of course, you know, for an average player, they might only want to do one season. They might want to go from having a brand new team to having the quickest team by the end of that season. So they're able to turn it up. I really love these career customization options. There is also now department events in career mode. So Lee Mather, the F1 game director, gave an example when he said that your simulator is having problems. It's going to cost a certain amount of money to upgrade it. So you can choose to do that. Perhaps it might affect you in the short term, but in the long term you'll gain. And various other things. So things can just go wrong. I'll make this one up, but it could be, let's say, there's been a fire in our wind tunnel. So the wind tunnel is not going to be working until you choose to pay to upgrade it. That one might not be in, but you get the point. Stuff will just happen randomly, and then you'll have to pay or spend time in order to be able to improve it, or there'll be opportunities to improve certain events. So it just keeps career a bit more dynamic. Sticking with career, practice programs have now been overhauled. So before there was a choice of, I think it's 5 or 6 or so practice programs. That's now been reduced to 3, but there's also other things within that. So if you complete certain objectives within those 3, you could, for example, reduce the cost of upgrades on your aerodynamics department. So again, they're a bit more dynamic, a bit more involved, but rather than just being kind of a bit more of a grind, they're just going to be a bit more, I guess, involved. And linked to that, you will now be able to do quick practice. So this is sort of like a manager mode, really. So if you don't want to do practice, which a lot of people don't, I used to do it because I had to get the resource points, but I didn't want to do practice sessions. But you can now basically do manager mode. So you sit there with a time remaining, and you let an AI driver do the things for you. So it might be, say, it's going to take 10 minutes. I'm completely making this up. It's going to take 10 minutes to try a standard objective. There'll be an 80% chance of it succeeding. It will take 10 minutes session time away, and then there's that percentage chance of whether it succeeds or fails. Or you could do, I want to do this practice program perfectly. It's going to take 20 minutes, but there's only a 20% chance of succeeding. So it's kind of like risk versus reward, and it means you don't actually have to do it in the car, but you can still gain the benefit of taking part virtually within the practice session. So I really like this. I think this is really useful, particularly for the more casual player. Finally, in career, there is now a focus stat to the AI drivers. So previously, they had stats that the developers gave them and sort of said, this is your pace and this is your consistency, that kind of thing. Focus is actually generated within the game. So this will change season to season, race to race, based on things like team activity. So, you know, what you're doing and how you're performing, the answers you give to the press. So if you sort of say, oh, my teammate's doing really well, he's naturally going to be more focused because he's a bit more keen. If you say, oh, my teammate's doing rubbish, he's going to get a bit demoralised and just not perform so well. And also affected by their individual on-track performance. The same, obviously, if they're performing really well, they'll have a lot of confidence, and then that will help them in the future races. The focus stat is basically going to be a multiplier on their other stats. So if their focus is really low, you know, they might only perform half as well as they should have done. If their focus is really high, they'll just kind of maybe perform 20% better than they should have done. Again, I've made those numbers up, but that's the idea of the new focus stat. Final little tidbit for career is if you pre-order the digital deluxe edition, you will get 7 classic or iconic drivers to sign in my team. So there's going to be Nico Rosberg, Jenson Button, Felipe Massa, Michael Schumacher, David Coulthard, Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. So I presume they'll be quite expensive, so I imagine you won't be able to hire them from race 1, or maybe you will, don't know. But perhaps from season 2 or 3 onwards, your team will have enough money and it'll have enough kind of accolade to be able to sign these drivers. So it's really cool that you can sign, particularly drivers that we all have in our heads that we love. Jenson Button would be a more modern one, obviously, but then you're also going all the way back to Ayrton Senna. So I love this, but you do have to pre-order the Digital Deluxe Edition. I don't know if it will be available after launch yet, but Digital Deluxe Edition is the only one that comes with those 7 iconic drivers. Moving on to multiplayer, there is now some quick multiplayer options. So previously you had kind of ranked and unranked, but ranked I found was a bit too hardcore. So they've now introduced 2 options. The first one is a beginner option, which will be more casual races, collisions will be off, and they're just designed to be a bit more fun and friendly. There'll also then be an experienced option. The race is a little bit longer, collisions are then enabled, and strict corner cutting is also enabled. So 2 options there to just jump straight into your preference of whether you're beginner or experienced in multiplayer. Sticking with multiplayer, they've now improved the custom lobby filters. So previously you just kind of had a big long list of all the custom lobbies that are active right now. Now you can filter it down by things like car category or session length. So let's say you wanted to do an F2 race, you can actually just filter this whole big long lobby list by F2. Onto the new gen updates then. This is of course the first F1 game to be on the PS5 and the Xbox Series consoles. So the first new gen improvement is going to be just improved graphics. They will also have a performance versus graphics option. So presumably, like a lot of games, graphics options will give you nice 4K. It'll look beautiful, but perhaps will only be 30 FPS, maybe 60. I'm not too sure on that. And then the improved performance option will give you 120 Hz. I'm pretty sure it looks like from the Xbox store pages. But then obviously probably lower resolution, lower quality. But obviously the game does look visually better no matter what. Certainly on PC it looks really great. Also, sticking with the new gen improvements, ray tracing is also going to be in the game. Interestingly, on PC it's available all the time while you're playing, but on consoles it is only going to be available in the replays, cutscenes, photo mode and menus. But it definitely looks better. In this build, I can't judge it yet because, to be honest, there is a few glitches with it at the moment, but obviously this is their first attempt at ray tracing and it's also an early build. So I'm not surprised. I'm not going to judge it yet until I've got the final build of the game, but it should make the lighting look a little bit better. Of course, with the new gen updates, we'll also get improved load speeds. I will say I run an SSD, a fast SSD on PC, and actually the load speed year on year hasn't really improved. I don't think they've done much, but to be honest, it was only taking a couple of seconds to load in anyway. So, but on console, you're really going to notice a big improvement. Last year would have been loaded quite slow. If you get the game on the newer consoles, the load speed is going to be much quicker, and you're literally going to go from menu to in the car in probably about 5 seconds. It's really, really fast. Final update for the new gen then is that the PS5 is going to support adaptive triggers. Not much more to say on that. Adaptive trigger support on the PS5. On some customization options then, so they've now added what they call a personal sticker, which is basically a sticker that will go on the Halo, and presumably you'll get some included in the game. You could probably buy some extras as well, just to kind of personalize the car a bit, specifically to what you want. And also, if you're in cockpit view or TCam view, you can actually see that sticker front and center. So a new personal sticker option for customization. Sticking with customization, there's also going to be some more decals to customize the multiplayer car. Again, we don't know too much more than that for now, but presumably just kind of stickers you can apply to various parts of the car rather than just kind of color schemes and paint schemes. They'll actually be, I don't know, stickers, decals is all we've got. Another interesting new feature which Lee Mather actually specifically wanted to highlight, I went to him and I said, hey, give me a smaller feature that you like in the game. And one he came up with, well, there's now a colorblind dynamic racing line option. So if you happen to be colorblind and you want to race with the racing line in order to see when to brake, when to turn, etc., etc. I'm going to pronounce these wrong, but this is the options in the menu: Protonopia, Deuteranopia, and Tritonopia. I've definitely pronounced those horribly wrong, so I apologise if one of those is yours. But yeah, you've seen them on screen, you know what I mean. But that's brand new. There wasn't a colour mode option, a colour blindness mode option before, so I really like that. It's more accessible, more inclusive, and actually a really nice, quite hidden change. There's also now going to be a victory radio call, they're calling it, which is basically going to be, I assume again, customization, so you can actually choose what you want your driver to say when they cross the line is the vibe I'm getting. Again, we don't know too much more than that for now, but I will say I've noticed that the AI driver, the winner, will drive along past the pit lane like they do in real life. They'll drive right next to the pit wall, with your engineers normally cheering. They drive along there, so presumably that's a change linked to the victory radio call, because no other drivers do that, and that wasn't there last year. They've also introduced a new race style. So last year you had the casual and kind of expert race style, but now they've introduced another one, standard. They're saying they've introduced the expert, but actually the expert is just kind of all options available, all assists available, but off. and it's just kind of the full experience. So expert actually is unchanged, casual is relatively unchanged, but they've introduced standard. So if casual was a bit too light for you, expert was too much, you've got that now middle mode. It's hard to know exactly what it does, to be honest with you, but I can see from the menus that it does reduce the amount of options you've got, so it just simplifies the game, I suppose, generally, and then also it helps you sometimes with some assists within the actual driving of the game as well. So just handy there for the newer player. Getting onto the smaller options then, you can now specify both how much damage you take from incidents and then how much that affects you from that damage. So there's two separate options now, whereas previously it was just kind of a damage option. Now you can take those two things separately. Another new smaller option, you can now choose the low fuel mode, so it goes from I think it's like hard or easy or something like that. So it will literally be presumably effectively completely run out of fuel if you're on simulation mode. But if you're on low fuel mode, you just have reduced power, but you can still carry on. Again, a nice option for the newer players there.